Perfect timing. Morning, Richard. How you doing?
I'm all right, Dick. Too. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So I might even jump into this one straight away instead of
You
having
ready?
5 minutes of mocking you for something.
Mocking
Uh,
me?
yeah, or you mocking me, whichever way
I
around
was going to say.
I can't remember whose turn it is this week.
Probably mine.
One way or the other, we'll get into it somewhere in this chat. But we'll start on a serious subject and one that you want to explore today, which is data breaches.
Yeah, I just thought that they were. I'm not going to say all the rage because that's completely the wrong thing to say. But it's like they were all over the news. They were quite prominent in the press about how um, they when they happen and what the impact is and things like that. And then I noticed that I didn't really see much of it. So I did some little googling around, and they're still happening. Quite a few, quite big ones as well. Disney, I think, got done, didn't it, recently? Fortinet, apparently, I discovered this morning, which is a cybersecurity company, which is quite interesting, and a few others. And you think you don't have to look that far to kind of realize that they are still happening. Not sure why they're not making the press as much as maybe they used to. Maybe is there a danger they've become a bit too kind of like, oh well, it happens, kind of attitude to it, rather than now, as I said a minute ago, there's only so much you can do. If someone wants to get in, they'll get in. I think that's, unless you've got, military grade cyber, um, you can almost prevent it that respect. But I just think, is there a danger that it's become a little bit too accepted that this maybe happens? And you mentioned you had an issue with it because it is so damaging, and particularly, if it happens, you just think, oh God, the impact and the damage and the effort that it takes to what's the word, sort it out and get everything back on. It's just immense from an individual's perspective. So is it that maybe the big businesses have just gone where it happens and they're not really? I'm not saying they're not taking precautions because obviously they will be and they have to for various regulatory reasons. But is it a case that they're just kind of going, oh well, it happens and we'll just deal with it if it does? Which I think is a
Yeah,
little
it's
bit
obviously you
weird.
mentioned
I just find it a bit strange.
yeah, you mentioned the one I've been caught up in a couple actually, but the first one was won't mention them, but an airline that's got a very orange tail on their planes.
Well, I call
Uh,
them. No, I won't say that
no,
because
don't say that.
I'll get
It
slandered.
I mean, this must be 8 years ago,
Yeah.
uh, and just seeing a note come up saying you changed device, but you haven't changed device. Uh, about 8 years ago, yeah. Just before I was due to go, so it was on the Friday. I think I got the email basically saying you need to cancel all your cards and close your account,
Mm.
or pretty much that. And it's like, well, I'm going away tomorrow morning. I can't go away without debit cards and stuff. But I literally had to walk out my work, or go into town, visit a branch, which luckily back then
Was
there
a
were
branch.
actually branches open. Go in and explain to them what had happened, and luckily I was able to get enough cash out to kind of cover the next few days until a new card was put in the post and sent out to me. But again, even that's not as easy
Mm.
these days. I also got caught in the British Airways one. I'm not sure how it's bad. I think there's an ongoing case on that. Uh, I'm sure I signed up to be part of some get your money back case type thing that's happening in the background on that. But that was obviously someone who had embedded their own code into British Airways' website and had been taking details for months. But again, as you said, back then that was like the top headline of BBC News.
Mm.
It was all over the place. You were shouting about what had happened, and as you say, I see them all the time, obviously, like you do, because we're in the environment and we read those press articles. But it does seem to almost be like you said. We've got to the point where we know it's just going to happen, so we don't shout about it. It happens. We make as minimal fuss as possible. We do what we need to do, and then we move on. And there were some big ones recently. I can't remember the company. It was a finance thing, wasn't it? And it was the tool that was used to move the data in between the two systems or something was the one that got hacked. And the one that exposed all the information. You're kind of like, well, is that your get out clause? Is it you were secure, but the company you use weren't? And as you said, Fortinet got hacked. It's kind of like, so you put your trust in someone else to provide the security for you. If they fail, is that your get out clause to say, well, actually, we followed everything we should have done? It was our providers that haven't, and therefore the whole
there's a whole GDPR / data protection
but
web that I don't know enough to say anything about that.
Yeah, I can't shout at the airline anymore for losing it because it wasn't technically them; it was a sub provider to them who did it, and therefore it's not as newsworthy.
Well, this is what I don't know. It's just I just found it a little bit weird that it seemed that it's still going on. I mean, I just googled it a minute ago, and a number of things are going on, and you're going, well, it just that doesn't make the news anymore. It doesn't make, and it impacts people horrendously. Particularly, this is a funny story. My grand, she died a number of years ago, but she was in her 90s, got wheeled down to the local shops every week, right, by my auntie, who would then take her to the cash point to get some money out. And both my parents and my auntie and uncle, they were both obviously managing, looking up, supporting her with bank accounts and things like that. And they noticed that like an element of amount had come out of her account and it had been withdrawn in Ukraine or something. It happened. I don't know how. I mean, this is going back a while, right? So I think it was my dad or my uncle phoned up and said, "Look, I don't know why this has happened. She's obviously gone to taking the money out." And they went, "She can't walk down the end of her path. She's 93 years old. She doesn't, by her own admission, have any recollection of ever going to the Ukraine. So how the hell has this happened?" And they did refund her. And it's a funny story now. But I mean, someone of that age going and seeing a load of money coming out of their bank account or something, and you're going, that's just an awful thing to try and have to sort out, even if you're relatively comfortable in that world. And it'd be horrendous.
And if you notice it,
well, quite.
My other half actually, that reminded me, she got done a few years ago with Uber, where someone in America was taking taxes all over the place and leaving massive tips using her. She basically got into her Uber account and was travelling around using it.
Isn't Uber? I think there's a few instances of Uber Eats they seem to have been a couple of times. I've noticed two people have told me they've had issues with Uber Eats. Random, because it just starts with small amounts, doesn't it? And then suddenly it starts getting bigger and bigger.
Incremental. So and it must happen all the time. You hear all the time about people having money taken out their banks, and I think my sister-in-law's had hers emptied previously as well, and stuff. It's fine for the bank to go, okay, we'll give you the money back, but it doesn't help at the actual time. It still takes time. There's still a process that has to happen. But yeah, I think it's interesting that it's almost become an accepted part of society that these companies will at some point get breached. Well, they've got most of your information.
You and I have just both listed a number of people that we know, and you got done. I got, and it was part of a big one a few years ago as well. Which I think, I won't name names, but it was one of the credit agencies. I think it was as part of that one, and you're thinking it wasn't much. Thankfully, it wasn't great, but yeah. So this is. We all have either been suffered from it or been part of it or know a number of people who have, and it's like that's just really bad, isn't it? And you do wonder, obviously everything's a massive online world, and there's certain precautions you can do, there's certain things you can take, steps you can take yourself, but I think it's probably I would be interested to know, not from a glorious perspective, but how many people have actually, what percentage of the population have actually been involved in some way, shape, or form, I bet it's really high.
I bet it will be because I mean, you and I just sat there and could give about 5 examples between us and people we know. So the rest of it probably is, but yeah, and whether or not we're shifting responsibility, but you are trusting, aren't you? Every single time you fill in a form, every time you pay for something. I mean, I use Apple Pay and stuff, and it's like I've put my trust that Apple are keeping those details safe and no one's going to get to them. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Someone who's incredibly clever, who understands how it all works, who's got a bit of a criminal intent, will probably get into that at some point. They're generally very clever guys who are doing this stuff and understand how to find the flaws. And yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? As we move more to an online world, move more to a cashless society and stuff, more is kept out. Maybe I need to get a shoebox under the bed full of cash, Richard. That should keep me safe.
That'll be fine. Yeah, that'll work.
I won't have to close that. I've only got about £3 anyway, so we're fine
£3?
on that.
God,
So,
yeah.
So pop in, but you're not getting a lot.
Just rattle it. Wow, put it back, it's fine.
But yeah, and you can see almost as more businesses have gone digital or have gone online or providing forms and online payments, you can almost see that the news stories of as that's grown, the news stories have dropped, even though the amount of things happening has obviously increased as well.
And QR codes apparently are very bad as well. Somebody always told me who was very, very knowledgeable in this space that do not scan QR codes. So I don't.
Was that me?
No, it wasn't you.
No, but I had one at a local authority that wanted to put QR codes on bins, and I was just like, don't do that. Please don't.
Well, it also has to go around this little black pen and just change it slightly.
Yeah, I was just like,
sure it's not that straightforward.
Even if someone doesn't put a sticker over it directing them to a payment website, it doesn't take much for a cheeky kid to put a QR code over the top of it that takes you to an X-rated website or something, and you're sat there trying to report your bin, and the next thing you know, some sites come up.
Watching all sorts, different types of bins.
Yeah, I don't know what's on those sites, but I imagine it's quite bad. So someone told me, and there are little things. There was one in the paper a couple of weeks ago or last week where someone had been putting QR codes over signs in a car park. And you're like, that is really bad because you know that QR code goes straight to a payment engine. And all they've got to do is do that once, look at what the payment engine window looks like, create a fake copy of that, give it a URL that's slightly similar. Before you know it, you're paying some random person to park. And there's something. Sometimes people don't help themselves, but there are times where you have to put your trust in the company you're buying from, that they're also storing it. And I think what's interesting is you also will see, as you said, the stories about Disney or Fortinet or something. You don't necessarily see the story about Joe Bloggs, who's been hacked or anything, because it probably only impacts 30 or 40 customers.
It's still enough.
It's
not still bad enough.
Yeah,
I think
it's not a global thing. And
on the topic of people not helping themselves, how many times have you sat in a train? On a train? Do you sit on a train? If you're on a train and you see somebody with the laptop wide open and they get up and go to the toilet or something, or in a coffee shop and they do the same, and you're thinking, and I sit there and I go, I mean, I'm not a cyber expert, but I know that you're looking at that going, that's just really poor, and you just don't know what someone has on there. And also, you just think there are certain things that if you've got, and I'm not going down the Excel rabbit hole again, but if you have ability to download customer data or sensitive information onto Excel, and someone can then email it to themselves, or they go off and carry it around in a lap, there is an element of exposure there that you're just going, I mean, if that's just kind of still happens, you still see it happening, and you just wonder what. I think, I'll only be 2 minutes. That 2 minutes could cost you or your company a heck of a lot of money and time. How long does it take just to shut your computer down and put it away? How long does it take to do that? You just go, boom, put it in your bag. 2 minutes later, you're back out. It just baffles me why that happens.
And it is. I mean, I don't travel on trains huge amount anymore, but
You don't
when
bother
I
with public
did, it was
transport, do you?
no, it's not for me. Uh, I walk. Even London, I've stopped getting the tube. I just walk across London
Me
now.
too.
I think because no one tells you quite how small the middle bit is, and actually, by the time you've gone down Liverpool Street to come out of Bank,
You might as well have
which
walked
has
it.
got 700 exits, you might as well
4
just walk
million
down the
steps
street.
and about 7-8 million
Yeah,
people.
I did walk from Liverpool Street to Tower Bridge to Borough Market and then back up to Bank the other day for a meeting. It was kind of like, if I'd have done that on the tube, you don't see anything. But anyway, yeah, but on trains, which I do go on, not just the security bit, the amount of times I've sat next to someone and just leant back a little bit and just read what report they're writing or
You
something.
don't.
And again, they've got no, but you can protect screens, you can do stuff to stop people doing that. But if you're sat there and you've taken up part of my space and you've stuck your laptop and your elbows are out, I'm going to lean back and see what you're doing. That's so important. And sometimes you can just sit there and read a company report and you're just like, oh, that's
You go,
interesting.
oh yeah, I see why you're taking those measures now, mate.
Yeah.
Or just go, no, you don't want to do it like that. You want to do it like this.
I just lean across and go, it's there. Why? Apostrophe RE. Just correct the spelling all the way through. But yeah, but there has to be, doesn't there, an element of people responsibility, which we always know is the biggest issue in most cyber things of phishing emails and things like that. People still click the links, but then there's the other element of, yeah, the actual company itself has to take probably a bit more responsibility. And I saw a post on LinkedIn recently, which I 100% agree with, that I can't remember who'd written it, but they talked about how, I know, sometimes I just try and find the conflict, and when there isn't any, I get disappointed.
You have an internal conflict.
Yeah, let's just argue with myself for a bit. But they were basically saying that it's the drive towards digital and digital transformation has kind of meant there's lots of people who have taken on the digital roles in almost head of IT jobs or CIO jobs who don't have the background in
Brace yourself. We're going.
IT or CIO. But it's true, there is, and I'd put myself in that category, so I'm not having a go. I understand the stuff we have to do and there's things you have to do of it, but I would have a network expert and
Exactly. You don't know everything. So
someone
don't
else
pretend you
working
do.
for me to do.
I think that's
Yeah, and I've got no concept. But if the way we've structured it at one of the councils I work at long term, they've got an IT setup and they've got a digital setup. And although digital have got a bit more freedom to go off and explore and do the transformational stuff, they can't do anything without IT approving it. And so IT have got kind of the security, the network, the setup, probably the Microsoft, the core products and the core applications. They look after that. Digital have a bit more of a remit to go and do transformational stuff, build new apps and do stuff. But everything has to be kind of approved before it goes live. They're not just given free rein to go off and build something that's massively insecure or stick it on the website. But I do think there's lots of areas, and I've been in other councils where it's almost like every time someone comes to them, it's like, well, we'll build you an app. And they go Power App crazy and start building them. And it's like, I don't know how much thought or concept you've put around the security of any of that. Because you've almost done you're almost into that kind of no code, low code world, aren't you? Where users can build their own stuff, which is fine. But as long as it's in an environment where you've got the security and some safety around.
The governance, isn't it? There's got to be some control. It's the same with dashboards and data. How many times you have stuff broken out and you have 15 different people producing 30 versions of the same report, and you're going, well, why are you doing? There has to be. I think this all comes back to the whole topic. the whole conversation and security all comes back to data ownership. You touched on it earlier. Can people, a business, wash their hands of being responsible for something happening if they use a provider? Now, there'll be some complexities about, in the governance world, who's the elements of that from a data protection and GDPR perspective, obviously, about who owns what, and I'm not an expert in any of that. But I think from my perspective and my experience, there's always that conflict as to who owns the data and who then is responsible for it if something happens. And I think if you engage with somebody else, but you've been entrusted with it, you are culpable, in my mind, as is the person you've passed that responsibility on, because you're the ultimate. And there will be, again, if anyone listens who knows this, by all means chip in, because I don't know the nuances around it. But I would always say that is how the responsibility works. And even on a bigger data, even on a data project perspective, you've always got people going, oh, I don't want nothing to do it, nothing to do with me. And you're going, well, it is. And I had this conversation with someone the other day about, well, who owns the data? And it's like, well, if the data originates in your area, the department, by a process that you've got or a platform that you use, you are the owner by proxy, even in a non-compliant, non-technically compliant perspective, even from a business governance, business process perspective, you are responsible for it, because you can't just go, oh, it's IT or it's a platform or something. No, because if you're using it, creating it, or any of those, anything like that, you should be the person that then goes, I'm responsible for making sure it's accurate, secure, what happens to it next. And then a simplistic view is, well, then everyone knows who's got what data, everyone knows what's where, who's responsible for it. If I have a question, I know who to go and talk to. Surely that's a simpler way, instead of that Spider-Man meme, which I've used a few times on here, going, what's you in it?
Yeah.
What's you?
Me? Well, the pointing is always back to IT, isn't it? It's IT's fault or IT's problem.
Or sometimes, if it's not, or whoever then is perceived to be the main data person in the main data department, could be finance, could be whoever's the main driver of reporting, for example. And it's like, well, are finance responsible for operational data? They might use it. So it's like it needs that's where, if you do a review, you bottom that all out and you go, operation is responsible for that, finance is responsible for that, marketing is responsible for that. Everyone knows what they've got, what systems they've got, where the data comes from. Even if you don't use it for reporting, you own it. It's your responsibility. And I think that tends to clarify. It's not as easy as saying that, because everyone goes, oh, I'm not doing it. But then that's where the governance comes in.
I think there's also a line in there about understanding, as part of that, what data you're collecting and why you're collecting it. Because again, just because your system's got a field to collect something doesn't mean you have to collect it if it's not relevant. And again, there's obviously under the ICO, there's the rules about what data you can collect and what you do with it and how long you keep it. But I mean, we've all been in places where they've got records going back 7-8 years, and you're just like, why have you got that? And they don't even know they've got it to start with, let alone why they collected it or anything like that. So
again, that's where the review comes in. Do you know what you've got, where it is, how secure it is? And if you've got some random database that's sat on some server in the middle of nowhere that no one knows anything about, that's a problem. It could be very interesting and useful, but it's also a bit of a problem. You need to deal with it. If you don't want to use it, don't keep it. Get rid. And
stick it on a hard drive, take it home.
Stick it on a hard drive. Sit around in Starbucks or any other coffee shop and lay it around everywhere and just let anyone pick it up and
see what's happened. But yeah, and I mean, the good thing is they're probably not as, I don't see them as much anymore, but the old little USB hard drives that people used to have on their key rings and stuff, they seem to have disappeared slightly.
Someone stole them all.
Someone stole them all. I mean, at least when we had them at Peterborough years ago, you could only use the encrypted ones. And if you stuck one in that wasn't one of our versions, it did alert the system. But by that point, you'd already stuck it in anyway. But that reminds me, I was reading about the new scam. Actually, is those thing that they're leaving them on people's drives as if they've been dropped, hoping that someone picks it up and goes, "Oh, someone's lost their USB. I'll stick it in my PC, see if there's a photo or any information on it." Sticking it in their PC, and obviously it's just sending corrupt files into the system and opening it up. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have I'd have walked past it anyway. But I suddenly just read, that's genius, isn't it? You literally could just walk around a city with 50 little USB sticks and just drop one every 100 meters. And all you need is one person to pick it up and stick it in their PC to see if they could find the owner, and you're in. And if that's a work laptop they've stuck it in, bonus. You've done twice as well then, haven't you?
Twice as well.
So I think from
almost. And then on the way home, they sit next to you on the train, and you steal all the secrets as well.
Yeah, I know. But you got to give some credit to the guys hacking, haven't you? That they're incredibly clever and thinking of new ways to get into people and to attack someone. I mean, QR codes is far too easy. You literally just turn up, change one square on a QR code, and you have it send it to a completely.
That's why a lot of companies hire hackers, don't they? Turn them into their best, because they obviously know all the loopholes.
The ethical hackers, yeah. I mean, we actually did it at it was Peter years ago. Our counsellors didn't like the fact you had to change your password every 30 days because the way you could kind of understand it because of how often
honestly, I know.
It was more to do with how little they logged in to the actual system. And literally you reset the password every 30 days rather, because none of them could ever remember it. But we actually sat them in a room, and I'd gone to legal, I'd got sign off to do this. But we sat in the room, and a third person sat in the room while I was talking to the counsellors about their security, and he hacked all their accounts while we were in the room with them. And he put their passwords on screen. I literally went, "I've just found, there's all your passwords. I've just gone and got them." So we did do a bit of an ethical hack just to prove the point that, look, this is how easy it is. Yeah. Someone who's literally sat 5 meters, well, not even 5 meters, 2 meters away from you, that you didn't even really know who he was in the meeting. He kind of just introduced himself with his name, has just sat and accessed all your systems.
Yeah, but he had a pixelated face.
His pixelated face and a balaclava and a black and white top on.
I am a hacker. But, who's that guy?
Yeah, he was actually the enterprise architect from IT, but it never met any of them. So we'd have no reason to meet any of them. They wouldn't have any reason to meet him, so they wouldn't have known. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he was a Microsoft MVP, and I'm pretty sure he just ran some PowerShell script or something to go and get all their IDs and passwords and stuff. So yeah, it's easily done. But I think there's a couple of things, isn't there? There's obviously data ownership, making sure that's back with the actual departments. I think there's a huge piece around digital and putting digital people in CIO roles who don't necessarily understand the complexities of networking, security, and stuff like that. And obviously, they're not the only ways you can hack. There's multiple ways, but there's some core fundamentals you should have in place before you even start. And then the loophole of it might have been us, but actually we're using a third party, and it was the third party that was hacked. So we've got an agreement with them, therefore it's on them to do that. And yeah, where do you sit with that? It's if you use Salesforce as your CRM and Salesforce gets hacked as a company, is that on you as the user of their CRM, or is it on them as the provider? They'll probably turn around and say, well, actually, you could have put more protocols in place, and you could have had 2FA, and you could have done
some, proper regulation that would dictate what that is. I don't know the complexities of it, because it's so, you can get quite, I think in concept it's, you can only do as much as you can to try and take preventative action, to implement the things that you can do, to understand what needs to happen and take necessary precautions. And I think, but you just don't know. As we said at the beginning, some people, if they want to get in, they'll find a way in. And I've watched Mr. Robot, so I know how they can do it.
I haven't, so I'm going to have to watch that.
Very good.
But I mean, you think about it in the old days before all this. Well, it still happens now, doesn't it? You still get randoms knock on your door and go on from the gas board. You open the door, you let them in. You go make them a cup of tea, and before you know it, they've stripped everything out of your house and they've gone. So
there's this other thing, isn't there? There's another question I think about. Someone was telling me about this the other day about the kind of the pop-up stop shops and the like the street food vendors and things like that, and they've got these card machines, and you're going. I always go a bit, and that's I don't know. Am I being overcautious, or do I? Because I would then use something like Apple Pay or cash if I've got it to get to, so I don't have that. And you're going, okay. I mean, that's again trusting that they're using things like there's particular companies that provide the whole package, isn't there? Without naming names, but you kind of go, well, you kind of trust that again, and I don't know. In my mind, it's just a bit. I think you have to have that element of. Do you pause? It's the same people say about cyber stuff. If you get an email I had one from Microsoft a few years ago, and it said you need to reset your password, do something. Can't remember what it was. I went, no, what? No, I don't. And I didn't quite understand it, but then I looked at it. It looked really, really real. It looked really authentic. And it was only when I clicked on, I checked the email address as another. If I don't. Not completely comfortable with it, I look at the email address, and even that, you're looking at it again, it's just not quite right. And you're going, ooh, that's that. I didn't, not that I would do it, I wasn't inclined to deal with it anyway, but that extra little bit made me go, no. Yeah, but the rest of it just looks so real. It was pretty mad.
But it's like the email address where, let's say it was Microsoft, they've just swapped the O for a 0. And if you just glance, you'll just see Microsoft.com.
Yeah.
And then you carry on. And yeah, like you said, some of the emails, and because obviously we have to have nice phrases in IT, that where we've now got to the spear phishing side of things, where they can actually target you in particular and kind of go, we know you've got this bank account, therefore we'll send an email from this bank. I mean, I still get random ones from banks I haven't got, but you do sometimes. There's that split second of, I need to do something, and then you have to pause for a second and go, hang on, I just need to figure this. And some you look at and go, they are 100% quite clearly phishing. And then others you can sit there for 5 minutes going, I'm still not 100% sure on this one. It's almost like delete it anyway, and if the bank phones or something and follows up, then
if you're not comfortable with it, just don't do it. And then
yeah, and you might. I mean, bloody Facebook's the worst, isn't it? If you do adverts on Facebook, the amount of messages you get from @Meta something telling you your account's been deleted because your ads don't comply or something. I see them every day in the entrepreneur group I'm in, with people posting it going, is this legit? And it's like, no, scam. We all get them. We get them every day. But you almost need to get to the point, don't you, where you have almost like your main bank account, and then you go take a Starling or a Chase or something out, and you almost just put like £100 in that, and that's the one you use to pay for everything. And when it's empty, you just put the next £100 in. So the only bank details you're ever sharing on the internet is that one particular account that your money is not really in. It's just you use it just for a payment account, and you keep everything else safe. And I can kind of see that's where things are going to go, where almost you have a digital wallet bank account sort of thing that just automatically tops up to a maximum amount, and that's all that gets spent on that card, and the rest of the time that account just sits almost empty. So that if you are hacked, they can probably get 200 quid tops. They can't get you the
is that what you do?
£350 life savings.
Is that what? Is that what you do when you got all your offshore stuff? You just pay something into a UK bank?
Well, they're very difficult because you have to fly to the Cayman Islands with your suitcases full of money and hand them over.
Is that what you do?
So
Interesting.
it's not quite so easy for them to hack those ones.
When you have to send it.
It's just a vault. Yeah. It's just a big vault in the Cayman Islands.
Underground vault.
Like Scrooge McDuck used to run into and dive into.
This gradual slope of gold that goes up into the corner.
Yeah. Although in my case, I dive in and I just hit the floor.
Look at my money.
So I realise there's nothing in it. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, there are things you can do and precautions you can take, isn't it? But going back to kind of the first point, I think the fact that they're not reported as much, or they're reported but almost in the specialist press areas, either means that people don't realise it's still happening as much, or as a society we've kind of just gone, yeah, we know it's going to happen, I'll get hit at some point, I'm almost accepting that, but I still need to go online and buy stuff and pay for stuff and do these things. Isn't there a bank that gives you like a one-off payment card or something?
Coots.
I'm sure one of them. I can't think if I'm making this up or not.
Coots.
I'm sure one bank, when you go to pay something, it gives you a one-off like payment card that you use just for that transaction.
Oh.
And then it disappears.
Like a token.
It's no longer. Yeah, it's no longer a card on your account.
Yeah. Nifty.
I'm trying to think whether I've just imagined the world's greatest
idea
solution to the problem, or whether
if no one does it, right? What would we edit that out, and then we'll talk afterwards about that, about whether we can make that working.
If anyone's listening to this and they realise that doesn't happen, they want to invest, just let us know and give us your card details. And we'll invest it for you.
Code Cayman 1.
Yeah.
Richard Data Dick 2's.
We'll go for that. It might take us a few years to get the technology right, so if you don't hear from us for a while, don't worry.
If you see any pictures of us accidentally on the beach somewhere, then don't worry about it. It's just we got
research.
Lost.
Yeah.
Research. It's a great idea, though, actually. You create a one-off payment token. I'm sure that must happen with credit cards. But
yeah, it must do. There must be a way.
Actually, if you have just a generic card that creates a one-off access token, I'm sure someone's done that. If they haven't,
I'm sure they must. I can't have just thought that up.
Or
I must have seen it somewhere.
And then we'll cut out. If you see a big gap in the middle of this podcast, then you know we've basically stumbled across a really good idea.
Yeah, luckily it's towards the end, so we can just cut off at half an hour.
It's just two endings. Anyway, see you next week. Yeah, see you later. Bye.
Yeah. So.
Alternative endings like Star Wars or whatever.
Yeah.
Or Breaking Bad, which is coming back apparently.
Is it? I've not watched any of it. I'm awful with series like that. I've never watched Game of Thrones. No. I've never watched Breaking Bad. I've never watched.
I watched Breaking Bad. It's really good.
The prison one, Never Call Saul. I've never watched the Ted Lasso.
I started watching Ted Lasso. I'll tell you what I have started watching is Dark Matter on Apple about quantum. Now that kicks your head thinking a little bit. That's like you finish that and you're going, what? But so much so that I started listening to an audiobook of whatever happened. Well, I'm going to butcher the title, but like Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger's cat. See, I told you I was going to butcher it. But I started listening to that, and I'm like going, whoa, this gets your head thinking something very different perspective on things. But it's a good show, actually. Really good show.
Yeah, my brain can't cope with stuff like that, Richard. Yeah. I read that book.
Just ChatGPT.
I read The Courage to Be Disliked, and that's a very different approach to. I think he was like almost the anti-Freud philosopher at the time.
A different approach to how you tend to tackle not being disliked.
Yeah, it's almost like Well, not really, because his is like, don't care. It doesn't matter whether someone likes you or not is not on you. It's on
Curiously,
them.
just like, oh, fuck it, I
And
don't give a shit, so don't matter. There you go. End of
I'm
book.
fine with that. There's me adding the R rating to the podcast. 1 minute from the end, I've got to add the R rating. But no, a lot of it is that it basically says if someone doesn't like you, it's on them, not you. So don't worry about it. I'm like, all right, I'm happy with that.
There's a lot of things like that, isn't there? Like the Stoics and things. I started reading the book about the Daily Stoic, and it says the same thing. You can only control what you can control. Your reaction to something is what makes you angry or annoyed. So I'm like, that's true. Makes sense. And I promptly lost my temper with something. So
yeah,
I need to learn more.
I never lose mine. Apart from the fact I've got a car that's got a fuel cap sellotaped onto it at the moment because I ripped it off in a fit of rage.
Did you hulk it across the forecourt?
There's just this white petrol cap sitting in the boot, and then tape across because the other bit keeps popping open whenever it feels like it because it's stupid. One day I'll go and get it fixed, but for now I just can't be bothered. It annoys me just looking at it.
That's why you leave it there. So that's within your control, though, isn't it? Because you're leaving it there as a reminder that I'm really, really pissed off at the moment, and that's what's annoying me.
And that's what's annoying me. So it's nothing else. It's just the car. And then the boot catch stopped working, so that annoyed me as well.
That's just called fate. That's quantum physics for you.
Yeah. I sit in the car with my phone on Auto Trader looking at other cars so that my car knows I'm not happy with it.
Just think, in another parallel universe, there's another version of you that's driving around in a perfectly good car with a petrol cap on.
With a petrol cap.
Waving at everyone as they're driving around. Morning, Howie!
He's not having as much fun though, really.
Next topic, Ned Plague's podcast is quantum physics.
Yeah. Right, mate, we'll cover that one next time. We'll call this one a day. Then. I think we've strayed from the topic far enough for today, so everyone watching is going, what are these two idiots?
Yeah, because you've laughed too much. You need to go and stare at your petrol cap now and be annoyed.
Absolutely. I need to get serious. We're talking data. So, right, mate, I shall speak to you in a couple of weeks. Next episode. Cheers, mate. Bye.